22 began with a massive game, Collingwood versus Geelong at the MCG. This was brought up to be a big match. I think people gave Geelong a real big chance in this one because of how Geelong came back in the last week or so, and Collingwood were pretty down on form and also had a few injuries coming into it. And they started this game off very well. They were about 6 goals to 3 at quarter time. There were 6 goals to 2 about a minute or so before quarter time too. So people thought this was going to be a really good chance for Geelong to maybe pull this one off. But it didn't really work out that way for Geelong, and now they're right back in the pack, losing by 8 points to Collingwood. It's going to be really tough for Geelong to get in from here. They have to win their last 2 games. Yes, they do have some winnable games, but they also need a couple of results to probably go their way as well, because if a couple of teams can edge away in the next couple of weeks, they could easily not make the 8, and at the moment, the Swans are in the 8, so for a club to say to have a lot of people would have thought that Sydney would have fallen off this year, and to an extent they have. I mean, they're not in the top 4, but Geelong have fallen right off, and they've got St Kilda next week, who looked okay against Richmond. If St Kilda can hold up in defence, they could potentially win this one, but we'll talk about that more when we get to the tips. We'll get to the votes, though. 3, 2, 1. The 3 votes went to Jeremy Cameron, 2 votes to Brody Myercheck, and the 1 vote to Josh Dacos. Jeremy Cameron kicked the 7 goals in the end. Was very good up forward. I don't think he deserved 2 of them. But anyway, that was fucking out of bounds. I don't care. That was fucking ridiculous. But he played pretty well. Jeremy Cameron, he got back into some form. And if he can hit form for Geelong the next couple of weeks and get them into the finals, I think they could do some damage in there as well. You wouldn't want to come up against Geelong in your first final. So I think if he hits form, Tom Hawkins potentially gets back in the next couple of weeks. I think Geelong can still do some damage, but at the moment, the way they're playing, I don't think they're going to do much at all. I don't even know if they're going to make the finals. So we'll see how Geelong pans out. At the moment, I think they'll make it, but only just. And with Collingwood, well, they got a big win here. 16 goals without the likes of Dacos getting the ball in the midfield, getting the ball forward, and Darcy Moore got injured quite early. He's going to be out for the rest of the home and away season. So good win for Collingwood. If they can just win one more game, they will take top spot, which, to be honest, it's top spot. They do deserve it. So I think that they'll get there anyway. They've got Brisbane next week, so they should win that. But if they don't win that, they'll beat Essendon. So Collingwood fans will be happy with that. They'll be top of the ladder going into the finals. Good win as well, and Brody Myercheck back in form. That's good for them. Josh Dacos, he was massive in that game. Without his brother, I think I've said this a few times as well, that Josh Dacos actually had a really, really good season. It's just his brother's probably had a better one, so it's a little bit unlucky for Josh, but he stood up without his brother and really helped his team get over the line in this one. So big win for Collingwood, and they really set themselves up for a big final series and potentially a premiership for the first time in 13 years. So that'd be massive for Collingwood, biggest club in the AFL, to then pull off a premiership this year. We'll see how they go out with that one. But a team that's probably one of the best teams in form at the moment, probably second most informed team at the moment, is the Sydney Swans, who had a pretty big match against the Gold Coast. Don't have the best record against the Gold Coast in Sydney, but they were able to pull away against the Gold Coast late. They kicked straight, 18 goals, 6. The Swans, 5 wins in a row now, and look, they're going to be pretty hard to beat if they make the finals. Their young guys are back. The young guys are back. The injuries are starting to diminish a little bit more. Rampy, I think, could be back this week, if not next week. So they've got nearly a full-strength lineup in the Sydney Swans. So their midfield as well is starting to stand up. And that 3-pronged forward line, I think it's going to take... I don't know if it will... I don't think Sydney can go that far in finals. I think that they will probably fall off. If they do make the finals, the Swans, I think they will probably go out, probably first round, if not second. But at this stage, Sydney do have a pretty hard run home. So they needed this win and they got it. So the votes, I gave Chad Warner the 3, Will Hayward the 2, and James Rowbottom the 1 vote. All 3 were massive. Will Hayward, probably one of his best games in his career, really. He kicked 4 goals, was probably Sydney's standout forward, especially with the other 3 up there, McLean, Amadi, and Logan McDonald. He stood up as well because they were well held by the 3 defenders, and he played a really good game on Charlie Ballard, so that's why I gave him the 2 votes. Chad Warner, he's getting back into that form that he had at the start of the season and towards the last year as well. So if he can hit form with Sydney and I will say that Errol Goulden was well held in the first half by Tuke Miller. I don't know why they dropped that tag. That seems stupid. That's when Sydney got back into the game. So I think that was just a misplay there by Stephen King. Stephen King? Yeah, Stephen King. So that's a little bit interesting. And the thing is, the Gold Coast, they're 15th now. They have not gone up. They've gone down this season. So I don't know. I think their list is prime for the next coach to come in, whether that be Damien Hardwick or whoever. But I think it's another failed season for the Suns, and it's really unfortunate because players like Ben King and that could potentially be moving at the end of the year just to get a trade out, just so they can have that chance for a premiership. He would have known people like Tom Lynch and Dion Prestige just to see them leave. So if they don't start to perform in the next couple of weeks, I think there could be maybe a player or two looking to leave the Suns at the end of the year, which would be really unfortunate, especially if they don't get Damien Hardwick, which I think it's kind of certain that he's going to get it. But if he doesn't, I think there's a lot of players exiting the Gold Coast Suns at the end of the year. After that, we get to North Melbourne versus Essendon. I'm going to be honest, this game was shit. Essendon have really wasted their fixture this year. They've had 4 games against the bottom 2 teams, and they have not got a percentage over 100 points, 100%. That is really poor by Essendon. I think their biggest win against these sides is 50 points against West Coast, which I know 50 points sounds like a good win, but against the West Coast Eagles, I'm sure you guys know, that's probably just that's getting over the line at this point. So they were lucky, Essendon, as well, that they won this game. They were very close to losing it, and I'm going to be honest, if it wasn't for Nick Martin getting back onto the wing, they wouldn't have won this game. He kicked 3 goals, 30 plus touches. He was massive, Nick Martin. The thing is now, I don't know if he's going to hit the All-Australian wingman because they took him off that spot and he's been unsighted almost for the last 6 weeks. So for Essendon, hopefully he stays there for the next couple of weeks because they can still make the finals. I don't think they will because Collingwood and GWS in the next 2 games. Sorry, GWS and Collingwood. 2 really hard games. I don't think they can do it, but it's a little bit unfortunate for Essendon because they've been sitting in the 8th for the majority of the year, and in the past few weeks they've just dropped out with terrible form. So yeah, Essendon, they still keep their finals hopes alive, but they're hanging by a thread. And in the end, even though I don't think many people would have expected Essendon to make the finals this year, it's almost like a failed season because they have done so well at the start, to then miss at the final hurdle would be pretty disappointing. But with the votes, we get to Nick Martin with the 3, Nick Larkey with the 2, and then Darcy Parish with the 1. We'll move on. Brisbane versus Adelaide Crows. Adelaide desperately had to win this game, and they got very close. Brisbane led them back into it in the last quarter. I was watching this game and streaming it, and the Crows, I think another 5 minutes, they would have definitely given them a run for their money, because Brisbane kind of stopped, and they've done that a few times this year. We saw them against Melbourne a couple of weeks ago do it, and they nearly did it again. But nonetheless, it probably was Charlie Cameron who got him over the line in the end. It was really unfortunate because I was saying when I was calling it, Michael Lanning actually had a really good game and he still got, I think, 4 goals kicked on him. So that's really unfortunate. And, Charlie Cameron's a match winner. If he just gets those opportunities, it's just, you just have to pray if you're a defender because he was brilliant in that game. But the Crows did well, and even though they've lost all their games, I think, away from home this year, or maybe, I think they won maybe one. Oh yeah, I think they won down in Tasmania. I think that's one of their only wins this year away from home. They've done well in the past few games away from home. I think they were pretty close against Collingwood, Melbourne, and now Brisbane, but those 3 losses potentially I think they've missed the finals now. It's going to be hard for them. However, there are a lot of teams in the... they've got the Swans this week. This is a massive game. If they can win that one, they're right back in the hunt. If they lose, they miss finals. So they need to win this one against the Swans. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But they were very good, and they are exceptionally good at home. So you give them a chance, but Brisbane at home were just going to be too hard to beat. Brisbane were very good. So the 3-2-1 votes. 3 votes went to Hugh McCluggage in his 150th. He was massive. Charlie Cameron got the 2, and then Rory Laird got the 1. All right. Oh, it's cold. Yuck. Anyway. Alright. Next we get to the match of the round. Carlton versus Melbourne. Carlton came out on top just by 4 points. We've already talked about the score review, so I'm not going to talk about that now. But well done for Carlton to win their 8th in a row. And they've I think it's like 1% chance they miss the finals from here if they lose 2 games and they lose all the other teams around them win. So I'm going to say it. I think Carlton have made the finals, which I actually said at the start of the year. I predicted them to make the 8. But surely they're there. You got to say it. Surely Carlton are there now. And they've been able to grind out some wins as well against top clubs. They've been able to beat the top three. They've been able to beat Port, Melbourne, and Collingwood in 3 games of their 8-game winning streak. So I know some people could say at the start of the run they just got some easy beats, which is fair, and I think that's 100% a good call. But they have actually got some wins against some really good teams, and I don't know if they can win the flag from outside the 4. But I think if anyone can, I think it could be this season, because I think a lot of the teams in the top 4 have kind of faltered at stages, and the teams that are hot at the moment are the teams outside the top 4, really. I mean, if you think about it, Sydney, Carlton, the Crows to an extent, when they're at home, they're a really hard team to beat. The Giants, except for the last couple of weeks. All right, maybe not all of them. But, there's a couple of teams. If the teams like St Kilda and the Bulldogs and potentially Essendon make the finals, I don't think it matters. I think it'll be a top 4 team. But if teams like the Crows, the Swans, the Blues, and Geelong, if those are the bottom 4 of the top 8, they're going to be hard teams to beat in the run towards the finals. They're going to be very hard teams to beat. So we'll have to see how that goes. Carlton were very good in this game, though. Lockdown just probably won the midfield battle, even though Petrarca and Oliver had quite a few touches, and Viney was pretty good as well. Curnow kicked a couple of goals, which may not sound like much, but in a game that was so low scoring, only 17 goals were kicked between them. That's a pretty good return for him. Harry Mackay not there. He's playing really well. And the Smalls of Carlton are playing good as well. But I think we have to give a special mention to Patrick Cripps. Hasn't probably had the biggest year. Obviously, last year he won the Brownlow, so he hasn't had as big a year as that. But he's definitely bounced back in these 8 weeks, and he played brilliantly in this one. I think he was arguably the player that got them over the line, and that's why I gave him the 3 votes. I gave the 2 votes to Clayton Oliver and the 1 vote to Nick Newman. Nick Newman has hit stellar form. He's probably in the best form of his career now. He started at the Swans, probably just didn't get that spot there. Also, I think the salary cap with Buddy Franklin, they had to clear out some space, so he was one that went to Carlton. And he's kind of been that small defender, but now he's kind of that running halfback, which I think he's more suited for. So I think Carlton are definitely using him in the right spot. Credit to Michael Voss. He's going to be playing for Carlton's first final series, I think in 10 years? It would have been a while, so it's good to see Carlton in the top 8. I know a lot of people wouldn't say that, but I think when the teams like the Carltons and the Collingwoods are in the top 8, fighting it out, I think it's always the big clubs of the AFL making it. It's always good to see. After that, we get to the Derby. I'm going to be honest, this is... Who cares? West Coast, you suck. That is embarrassing to lose against any team by 100 points, especially your crosstown rivals. And then, for God's sakes, this is your 5th or 6th 100-point loss in a season. That is fucking embarrassing. I'm not going to talk too much about this because there's not much to review. Fremantle kicked 17 goals in a row after West Coast kicked the first 2. I looked at the scores and saw West Coast kick the first 2, and I'm like, oh, this could actually be a chance here. And then Fremantle just bagged on 20 in the end. Whatever. Anyway, 3 votes went to Lachie Schultz, won the Glendenning medal. He actually was really good at Lachie Schultz, and I think he's had a really good year. I think that Fremantle can definitely build around him. He's definitely probably one of the best hybrid forwards in the game now. Probably just behind... maybe a big thing to say. He's probably just behind Toby Green as one of the best hybrid forwards in the game. I don't see him as a small forward. I see him a lot more like Toby Green as like a small tall, if you could say that, because he's a really good mark overhead. He gets up the ground. Yeah, I think he's one of the best forwards in the game. He's very clean with the footy as well. So I think that they've definitely got a player to build around there. Luke Jackson got the 2 votes. He was brilliant in the ruck. He was very close to, I think, winning the Glendenning medal as well. And Jordan Clark got the 1 vote for Fremantle. Next game, Hawthorn versus Bulldogs down in Tassie, and me and my brother both tipped this. We tipped that Hawthorn would beat the Bulldogs. I think we said it last week, they're a huge response team, the Bulldogs. They won't go down to Tasmania and win this game, and we were 100% right. Hawthorn stood up, and one of their fortresses really in Tassie. I think they should just move down there, but I know I'm gonna get so many comments if people hear that. But no, they were brilliant, Hawthorn, and they got a couple more weeks to go. They got Melbourne this week, and I can't remember who they play in the last round, but they've got a couple of they could definitely bag another win. I wouldn't be too surprised if they did. They've rebuilt very well, Hawthorn, and they're definitely set for a couple of good years. I think someone like that. I think it was 7AFL posted. Do you think Hawthorn will make the finals next year? I think next year's a little bit out of the question. I think they still need another year of development. But the thing is, because they're all so young, they're all going to build together in the next couple of years, which is just massive for the Hawthorn development, and they've just done it well. The Bulldogs, they scrape back. They've got West Coast this week, which, I mean, they need a little bit of percentage. They might as well get it. But then they've got Geelong in the final round down in Gardenia Park. That's going to be tough for the Bulldogs. If they don't make this final series, Luke Beveridge's job should be a question. I know that's a Kane Corns thing to kind of say, but how can't you question his coaching? They've got the list of the century. I think one of the best lists in the AFL, which is big to say. I mean, they've got Brisbane, you got Melbourne, you got Collingwood in there. You got probably one of the best young lists in Port Adelaide, and this team's got one of the best lists, young and experienced players. And they're just wasting it. They're playing terrible football. They're playing too selfless football. And if it wasn't for Bontempelli, they would be a long way further down the fucking ladder. They're playing terrible at the moment, the Bulldogs. And they're only winning games when they need to respond. So, they'll beat West Coast this week. People will say, oh, they're back or whatever. They're in the 8. But they could definitely fall out of the 8 by the end of the season. So they're going to be really careful, the Bulldogs. And, I think the questions need to be asked of the Bulldogs at the end of the season if they don't make it. But anyway, to the votes. 3-2-1, Jai Newcomb got the 3, Carl Amon with the 2, and then Marcus Bontempelli with the 1. By the way, Jai Newcomb, he's one of the best clearance players in the AFL, which is insane to say, because a couple of years ago he was playing for Box Hill, and now he's one of the best clearance players in the AFL. So, good on him, and he was massive in that game. I think he had a career high 40-plus touches. He was just great. So, good on him. And next we move to St Kilda versus Richmond at the Marvel Stadium. The Marvel Stadium curse for Richmond shines again. They can't win at Marvel Stadium ever since I think Damien Hardwick said it a couple of years ago. We don't like playing here. They just can't win there. So, I mean, I guess he was telling the truth. But, yeah, St Kilda keep their season alive, which is kind of interesting because we keep on just expecting St Kilda to fall out of the 8. And I still think they will because they've got Brisbane, Geelong and Brisbane in the next 2 weeks. So I think they will fall out of the 8 just because their percentage is pretty low and that draw that the teams like the Swans, Geelong and Carlton have, I think will just be too much. But, I mean, they're holding themselves in there. They're just in there at the moment. Max King fired in that game. He kicked 6 goals for them. I still think, though, that St Kilda's big issue is the fact that they got 6 goals out of Max King, but the rest of the 21 or 22, depending on the sub, only got 8 more goals. So if he doesn't fire, they literally, if you take 6 goals away from Max King in that game, they draw the game. So, look, Richmond, I don't know if they go with Andrew McWalter after this too, because he's kind of fallen off in the past few weeks. I think they need someone outside the club to coach them. I don't know. I don't think interim coaches work. I know my brother said that a lot to me. So I don't know if that's exactly the choice that they should go with. It'll be interesting. I think Chris Newman's been talked about as well as a potential coach for Richmond. I don't know about ex-players playing for coaching their team, but on the other hand, it's been quite a while since Chris Newman played, so I don't think it's that big a deal. But it is very hard to pick a club champion. We obviously saw the prime examples play like Brisbane over those few years when they had Michael Vossen and Justin Leppich. It was very hard to let them go because they were such pillars of the club, but they eventually had to. And obviously Nathan Buckley as well. So it'll be interesting where Richmond go with that. This game, though, St Kilda played really well. They kind of bursted out of the blocks, really, and kind of held Richmond at bay for the majority of it. They keep their final hopes alive. I think they will fall out, like I said. The votes now, Max King with the 3, Rowan Marshall with the 2, and Jade Gresham with the 1. After that, we get to the final game of the round, and what was set up to be one of the best games of the round turned out to be Port Adelaide blowing them out of the water in the first quarter. So Port Adelaide, I think was their highest score of the year, 136, 21 goals against GWS. Massive win for them, 50-point win. They needed it going into the finals. They lock up their top 4 spot. Potentially can move into the top 2 in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. I don't know if Port are back, though. It's going to be hard because they've still got a lot of injuries. Sam Hayes is actually really good in the ruck as an in because Scott Lysett's still injured. But Charlie Dixon, I don't know if he'll be back very soon. I think they said it was a long-term injury, so that potentially means he won't play the finals either. So Todd Marshall all by himself as a tool. I know Jeremy Finlayson's there, but I don't see Jeremy Finlayson as a pack mark or anything. So if you need to kick it down the line, Todd Marshall's your only option. I don't know if Port can do it. So I mean, good win for them. They lock up a top 4 spot. If they get a top 2 spot, anything can happen because being at Adelaide Oval is a massive advantage, just like Brisbane being at the Gabba is a massive advantage. But I think it's the young midfielders of Port Adelaide that needs to be shone here. I know it has been a little bit for quite a while now, but Jason Horne-Francis, Zach Butters, and Rosie, all of the 3 voters in this one as well, were massive. They were massive in this game. I mean, for the next 10 years, 15 years, this Port Adelaide midfield is going to... Well, not 15, but... Well, 10 years, I mean, at least. This midfield is going to be carrying the Port Adelaide Footy Club, and they can build a potential premiership off of them. They are going to be massive for the club, and we'll get to the votes quickly. Horne-Francis got the 3, Butters with the 2, and then Rosie with the 1. Now, the reason why I gave Horne-Francis the 3 over the other 2 is because he kicked the 3 goals. Massive for a midfielder, and... I mean, he's 19 years of age, and he's playing like he's 25. He's going to be massive, Jason Horne-Francis. I know that people were pretty angry about the fact that he left North Melbourne so hastily last year. Who would want to stay at that club? I mean, I'm going to be honest. Who would want to stay there? They're playing dreadful footy. They had a really good start to the season, but they're playing woeful now, and they've lost 20-odd games in a row. So I don't see much of an issue. And I think it's pretty funny as well that a player coming back to SA is huge talking points, and you get booed every week. But going back to Victoria, you don't hear much about that. So, yeah, I think it was a good win for Port. I don't know if they're back. The Giants, I am going to give them a little bit of a mulligan here because they did have injuries to Bedford and Daniels, 2 of their best players this year. And, yeah, I don't know if they make the finals, though. I give them a mulligan, but I also think that was the game they had to win, and I did tip them. So, the Giants, yeah, I think they may miss it. But even so, if they do miss, I think they've had a wonderful year, the Giants. Adam Kingsley, Toby Green, Stephen Keneally has had a wonderful year. Tom Green, even though he got a bit injured throughout the middle part. And obviously Sam Taylor and Jack Buckley down back have been brilliant. So they don't have to worry for the years to come, the Giants, but I don't know if they'll make it this year.